Nobody wants to say this out loud, but something strange is happening, and the numbers are getting harder and harder to ignore. More women than ever are reporting little to no interest in dating, in relationships, or even in sex. And I don't mean a small dip, I mean a shift big enough that researchers have actually started giving it a name. So the question is simple: is this freedom? Is it burnout? Or are we watching one of the biggest behavioral changes of the entire decade happen in real time? While almost everyone just pretends it's normal? Now, before anyone gets the wrong idea, this is not about blaming women for anything. It's the opposite. It's about understanding why so many people on every side of this are quietly checking out of the one thing humans have chased for thousands of years. Because once you see the full picture, you really can't unsee it. And trust me, by the end of this, you're going to see it everywhere. Let's start with the part nobody can argue with: the data. People are having less sex than they used to. Relationships are forming later. Marriage rates keep sliding. And the share of adults who go an entire year without any intimacy at all has been climbing, especially among the young. Researchers even gave it a name: the sex recession. Everyone assumed it was temporary, a blip. It wasn't, it kept going. But here's the part that actually caught my attention. When Pew asked single adults whether they were even looking for a relationship or casual dates, a massive share said no. They weren't searching. They weren't trying. They were simply opting out. And single women were noticeably more likely than single men to say they had zero interest in dating at all. Sit with that for a second. It's not that they couldn't find someone, it's that they looked at the whole thing and decided it wasn't worth it. That's not a shortage, that's a verdict. And when millions of people reach the same verdict at the same time, that stops being a personal mood and starts becoming a movement. So the real question was never whether this is happening. The data settled that. The real question is why. And that's where things get weird. So let's talk about the most obvious suspect: dating itself. Because somewhere along the way, dating stopped feeling like an adventure and started feeling like a part time job that pays absolutely nothing. Picture it: a woman matches with a guy, decent conversation, a little spark, 2 days of texting, and then it just dies. Three unanswered messages later, for no reason she'll ever know. She doesn't cry about it. She doesn't even get angry anymore. She just closes the app, makes a cup of tea, and feels something close to relief. Now multiply that moment by years. Swipe, match, silence. Swipe, match, ghosted. We literally had to invent new words just to survive it. Ghosting, situationship. Think about how bleak that is. We needed brand new vocabulary to describe how confusing this got. And here's the cruel irony: more choice was supposed to fix everything. Infinite options, right at your fingertips. But infinite options didn't create satisfaction, they created paralysis. When you believe there's always someone better, one swipe away, you never fully commit to anyone in front of you. So everyone keeps one foot out the door, permanently. Live inside that loop long enough, and a lot of women look at the whole system and quietly say four words: I'm done with this. And honestly, can you blame them? When the process feels like punishment, walking away feels like freedom. But dating fatigue alone doesn't explain everything, because people have complained about dating forever. Something deeper changed too. Now here's the factor everyone loves to celebrate, and almost nobody examines honestly: independence. And I want to reframe this completely because most people get it wrong. Independence didn't kill relationships, it just quietly rewrote the job description. Let me explain. For almost all of human history, a partner was infrastructure. You paired up because life alone was brutally hard. Two incomes, two sets of hands, survival. The relationship wasn't romantic, it was structural. Now, fast forward to today. A woman can earn her own money, buy her own home, build her own career, pay every bill with her own name on it, which is a genuinely good thing. Nobody should be trapped in a relationship just to keep the lights on, but look at what that does to the role a partner plays. The old job was help me build a life. The new job is improve a life that already works perfectly fine without you. And that is a brutally difficult position to apply for because now the bar isn't, can you provide? The bar is, are you actually better than my peace? Are you better than my quiet apartment, my own schedule, my Sunday with nobody to answer to? You hear it everywhere. I don't need a man. And often that is completely factually true. But here's the trap nobody wants to admit. Not needing something and not wanting it are two very different things. Independence solved survival. It did not solve loneliness. You can be the most self sufficient person on earth and still lie awake at night wishing someone was there. And that quiet gap between not needing and still wanting is where this entire story is about to get strange. Because here's what almost nobody noticed. As women gained more freedom, more options, more independence than any generation in history, something happened that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. They didn't get happier. Economists actually studied this. They tracked self reported happiness over decades, right through all the gains, all the progress, all the expanded choices. And by several measures, women's reported happiness didn't rise. It slowly drifted down. They gave it a name too, the paradox of declining happiness. Think about how backwards that sounds. More options, less satisfaction, and this isn't just a relationship thing. Psychologists have shown it over and over. When you give a person two good choices, they pick one and feel great. Give them 50 and they feel anxious, paralyzed, and convinced they picked wrong. More choice doesn't free us. Past a certain point, it quietly tortures us. So now, layer that onto modern dating. A woman today has more romantic options than any queen in history, thousands of faces in her pocket, and instead of feeling powerful, a huge number of people feel exhausted, suspicious, and weirdly empty because every option carries a silent question. What if the next one is better? And when the next one is always theoretically better, no one in front of you is ever quite good enough. We were sold the idea that unlimited choice was the dream. Turns out it might be the trap. We didn't free people from bad relationships. We accidentally made them afraid to choose any relationship at all. And once you see that, everything else starts to click into place. Take social media, because it pours gasoline on this exact fire. Open TikTok, open Instagram. And what flows into your eyes all day? A nonstop highlight reel of other people's perfect love lives. The surprise trips, the flowers for no reason, the couple that apparently never fights. None of it is real. It's the best 2 seconds of someone's month, filtered and posted for applause. But your brain doesn't file it as fiction. Your brain compares, and your real, flawed human partner loses to 1,000 strangers every single day. Then there's the advice, and this is where it gets genuinely insane. One viral video gets 20 million views telling women to never settle for anything less than perfect. The very next video tells men to never chase, never text first, never look too interested. Put those two messages side by side and watch what happens. Nobody settles. Nobody chases. Nobody moves. It's a standoff, broadcast to millions, with no winner. Scroll for 5 minutes and you'll find hundreds of creators explaining why every tiny inconvenience is secretly a red flag. He took 3 hours to reply? Red flag. He has a different opinion? Red flag. He's human? Huge red flag. And here's what people miss. The algorithm isn't rewarding wisdom. It's rewarding extremes. Because outrage, it gets clicks. So millions absorb the most divisive takes as gospel, crank their standards up to impossible, and then wonder why no actual human being ever measures up. You cannot build real love while chasing a fantasy that's being injected into your eyes every single day. And before anyone says this is all about women, stop, because men are walking off the exact same cliff, just from the opposite side. Somewhere right now, a guy is standing in a coffee shop. He sees someone he'd genuinely love to talk to. His heart speeds up, and then he quietly pulls out his phone, opens Netflix, and stares at it until the moment passes. Rejection avoided. Connection avoided too. That tiny scene is playing out a million times a day. Young men today have fewer close friends and less confidence than almost any generation on record. The fear of rejection has gone nuclear, partly because rejection now gets screenshotted and laughed at in a group chat. So a lot of guys just stopped trying. And what's waiting for them at home? Everything. Games engineered to feel more rewarding than real life, endless content, and pornography. Instant, infinite, demanding nothing. Why risk something hard and uncertain when something easy is one click away? Add wages that don't stretch and rent that eats everything. And a lot of men feel like they have nothing to offer, so they offer nothing. There's a brutal symmetry here. Women pull back because the process feels exhausting and the standards feel impossible. Men pull back because the risk feels pointless and the comfort feels safer. Two armies retreating from the same battlefield, each convinced the other side surrendered first. And honestly, why would either side march back out? Look at what they'd be leaving. This is the part people underestimate the most. Comfort. Relationships always had competition. It just used to be other people. Now the competition is your own couch. Infinite shows tailored to your taste. Food at your door in 20 minutes. No conversation required. Communities of strangers online who agree with everything you say. And increasingly, AI companions that listen, validate, never argue, and never have a bad day of their own. None of it demands the one thing real love requires: effort. A real partner is inconvenient. They get moody, they disagree, they ask you to compromise. Set that next to a world built for instant, frictionless comfort, and the relationship starts to look like a bad deal. We're trading connection for convenience, one cozy, lonely night at a time, but comfort isn't even the deepest layer. Underneath all of it sits something far more powerful, and that something is fear. Not loud, dramatic fear, the quiet kind, the kind that dresses up as being smart and careful. Talk to enough people who've stepped away from dating, and you hear the same thing under every excuse. They're not tired, they're scared. Scared of rejection, scared of being cheated on, because everyone knows a story. Scared of divorce, because they watched it gut someone they love. Scared of wasting years and walking away with nothing. And the biggest one of all, scared of being truly seen and then discarded anyway. So fear does what fear always does. It builds walls and calls them standards. It dodges risk and calls it self-respect. It runs from vulnerability and calls it knowing your worth. And some of that caution is fair. Getting hurt is real. But here's the trap that closes on everyone. You cannot build intimacy without risk. Connection requires you to be exposed, to hand someone the power to hurt you, and trust they won't. There is no version of love with a guarantee attached. So when fear wins, you don't get safety. You get isolation with better branding. And here's the cruelest twist. The harder you work to protect yourself from pain, the more certainly you sentence yourself to the slow, dull ache of being alone. Once enough, people live like this. Guarded, defended, unwilling to gamble on anyone, the whole culture shifts. Caution becomes normal. Reaching out becomes the exception. And loneliness stops being a private problem and turns into the background hum of an entire generation. And that's the moment you realize this was never really about sex at all. Sex is just the symptom, the thing that shows up in the surveys because it's easy to count. Pull back, and the real picture is so much bigger than anyone's bedroom. When people stop forming relationships, they stop forming families. Birth rates across the developed world are falling below replacement. In some countries, dramatically. That's not an opinion, it's arithmetic. Fewer couples, fewer children. Shrinking communities, strained economies. Entire nations quietly aging into a crisis nobody voted for. But it cuts deeper than economics. Humans are wired for connection. We are not built to thrive alone, no matter how many shows we stream. The loneliness epidemic is now serious enough that public health officials have compared its toll on the body to smoking. Let that land. Being chronically alone may be doing real, measurable damage to millions of people, and we're treating it like a harmless lifestyle choice. So when you hear that women are checking out of dating or that men are vanishing into screens, understand what's actually underneath it. This is a society slowly forgetting how to bring people together. The bonds that held everything in place, romance, family, community, are fraying all at once. So where does that leave us? This was never simply about women, and it was never simply about men. It's about all of us living in a world that made avoiding each other easier than ever and trusting each other harder than ever. Dating burns people out. Independence raised the bar. Choice quietly poisoned our satisfaction. Social media warped our standards. Comfort removed the pressure. And fear finished the job. None of those forces are evil on their own, but stacked together, they built a culture where checking out feels logical and reaching out feels reckless. And maybe that's the real story here. Maybe historians won't remember this generation as the one that stopped having sex. Maybe they'll remember us as the generation that slowly forgot how to trust each other. Because civilizations don't collapse in a single night. Sometimes they just quietly stop believing other people are worth the risk. So let me hand it to you. Is this a temporary phase that corrects itself? Or are we watching one of the biggest cultural shifts in modern history happen right in front of us? Tell me what you think down below. And if this gave you something real to think about, subscribe and stick around. I'll see you in the next one.